Well, China is finally getting involved in South Sudan. China's top envoy to Africa says Beijing is beginning a new chapter in its foreign policy as it joins the effort to help restore a conflict that has brought the nation to the brink of a civil war. As the biggest investor in South Sudan's oil industry, experts have argued that typically reserved Chinese diplomacy will have to keep pace with the country's growing business interests on the continent. Zhong Xianhua, China's special representative on African affairs, joined peace talks last month.
I think first I should admit that this is a challenge to China. This is something new for us. Since our president made the pledge that we will do more on the peace and security for this continent, and it is the new chapter for the Chinese foreign affairs.
Western diplomats have criticized China for what they see as an aloof policy doctrine, arguing that the country's weight as an investor in South Sudan now gives it extra leverage to diffuse tensions there. On January 23rd, the government of President Salva Kiir and the opposition led by his sacked deputy Riek Machar agreed to a ceasefire deal, but both sides have accused each other of violations. While external mediation efforts are seen as critical to the restoration of peace and security in South Sudan, there is an increasing debate over the role of the youth in that young country. The fighting forces of both the South Sudan government and those of the opposition are composed mostly of the youth, some who returned only a couple of years ago from years of exile. Others had served as child soldiers during the bitter war against Khartoum. Experts say lack of employment and poverty among the youth makes them vulnerable to individuals or groups that may want to use them for political or even selfish purposes. Many of the youth do realize, though, that the country's destiny is inevitably tied to theirs. Well, for more perspective on the role of the youth in South Sudan, we are joined by Lukudu William, an Atlas Corps fellow from South Sudan. He's currently serving at the National Endowment for Democracy. Mr. William, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Vincent.
You come from a very young nation. You're a young person. What do you feel about what's going on right now in South Sudan?
Thank you, Vincent, for hosting me. Thanks to Voice of America and the Africa 54 program. And hello to our viewers. It's very unfortunate that our country that has just come out of civil war of more than 20 years has got to go through the situation that we are seeing. I, in Washington, feel so sad and saddened by the events that have happened in my country in the last 2 months, just like any other youth who is either here in abroad or back home.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about the youth, there's something very interesting about Sudan. The young people in South Sudan right now are the ones bearing arms, as we just mentioned in our package. They're the ones being used in this war. And also they're the same ones who are suffering, being displaced, being killed. What do you think the youth need to do to change the course of events in South Sudan?
Well, as you put it very rightly, the youth are very, very critical in our country, especially in nation building. And this is the time that our youth need to come together more serious than ever, because here is the peace that we just got. We have our country, we got our new independence. We have the task to now come up as youth to really put our acts together as one people, regardless of which region you come from, which tribe you come from, and put this country in the right path. Because if we don't do it well as the youth of today, the generation that comes will look for us and history will follow us, that you followed your forefathers, you did not search a better way, a better alternative for this country as youth.
Now,
so
there's a conversation going on. In Juba over the weekend, they were talking about why the youth are involved in some of this violence. And here in Washington, there was an event I think you attended. What is being proposed in practical terms beyond just a theoretical kind of a concept of what young people should do? What was that?
Well, from what I'm gathering and seeing from around the media and the discussions I've attended so far in Washington, there are sentiments that people, the leadership must take this serious this time round to ensure that youth are represented in all aspects of governance, particularly in the political, economical, and even cultural and social levels, to be able to influence decisions and structures, and as well as the development aspect of it. However, at the level of the negotiations, that is something that the civil society groups and other women and youth groups are advocating to be part of it, so that their views can be heard.
But what do you do about the thousands of youth who have no jobs, who are poor, and they're being given arms and being told, go fight the other fellows? What do you tell those ones? How do you reach them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge that a post-independent country like South Sudan faces, just like any other country that came out of a long civil war. And definitely the private sector with the civil society is doing its best to ensure that they advocate to the youth to come together to work for a better, one country. And the government also has a role to play to lead, to have a national policy for the youth, so that people look into it. We do know that about 80% of our population live in the rural areas. And it is critical that the youth who are outside there, especially in the rural areas, are reached, because most of them are not educated.
In very few seconds, if this was a platform, an opportunity for you to speak to all the young people of South Sudan, what will you tell them right now?
Well, my message would be very clear. One, we've got our independence. It is ours. We fought for it. Our grandfathers fought for it. Let us hold it very hard. Two, we cannot move forward without being as South Sudanese. We can never be a bunch of tribes. We can never be individuals. It is time for South Sudanese to come together, women and men, youth, to work for peace and for the development of the new nation.
Okay, poignant message there. I hope the young people of South Sudan are listening. Lukudu William, thank you very much. Lukudu William is an Atlas Corps fellow from South Sudan here in Washington, D.C. And we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com.